right, welcome back to the show, Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. It's time to bring you the interview segment of the show. And we have with us in the studio Mr. Sola, who is the media assistant to Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State on ICT. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning, Emmanuel. Thank you for having me.
Joining us.
Good morning.
Well, let's go straight to business. Let's take a look at the administration of Governor Ademola Adeleke.
Okay.
You know, when he was inaugurated, he gave a very long speech, and the 24th item, on that speech was talking about ICTs and how he was going to use ICT. Let me read it out. The administration will collaborate with development partners to address problems of environmental pollution and climate change. It will equally promote digital literacy, tech innovations, and create opportunities for teaming youths in the ICT sector. So far, so good. How well and how far has the administration gone on fulfilling that promise? Okay.
Good morning once again, and thank you for having me. You see, currently in the old world, the new world currency is ICT. ICT is practically applicable to every sector. So any government, any serious government, would take ICT as its priority because you can use it to drive every sector and drive it effectively. It helps to control every system so that you can manage the efficiency. So when this government came on, some of the things that we discussed as at the time it was coming on was how we can reposition the state, reposition it globally in terms of ICT, because we are trying to align with the global standard practice. We can't just come up with our own ideas because ICT is globally acceptable. So there are standard practices that we need to align with. Even in Nigeria, there are policies that are in other states, like in Nigeria, that Osun doesn't have. For instance, Osun does not have an ICT policy. Osun does not have a science, technology, and innovation policy. Osun does not have a startup act. So all of these things were things that we thought about, and we thought, okay, we could consider these things. And then we thought about empowering the youths. I mean, currently in the world, everybody's driving towards ICT. So we thought about, instead of doing empowerment and we're buying wheelbarrow for people, let's train them. That's why we came up with the idea of digital literacy, so that we can have people work in Nigeria and in foreign currencies, and together we develop the states.
Well, so far, how much of progress has been made on that, considering some of the foundational issues that need to be sorted out before you can embark on such a project? Okay.
So when I started, I was talking about how a serious government needs to take ICT. I mean, we'll take ICT up. And one of the things that I'm glad about is the fact that when we're planning the 100 days agenda of the governor, he allowed us to insert ICT. I mean, because we had to, you would think that it would take time to launch such an idea. So while we discussed it, it was just like, okay, let's have it drawn even within the first 100 days. So we started working on the policies. All these policies that I mentioned as of today is at 80% completion. In fact, from the 14th of February, we'll start a validation exercise by inviting stakeholders from across the state, the country, to come and see the policies. These policies, they will review, they will have the opportunity to review the policy. Then we'll do a town hall meeting for the entire state, I mean, stakeholders within the state and within the circle of the concerned partners to come and see these policies before we present to the governor for final assent. On the Startup Act, we are already almost at 80% as well, because the governor has to review before presenting to the House of Assembly. It's a act. It's going to be a act when finally assented. So it's not something we can just sign on. It has to be passed as a law, I mean, at the House of Assembly. So the third of it, which I have not really mentioned, is the fact that we thought about the online presence of our communities, because there is this popular saying by those of us who study communication that the world is a global village. And I said in one of my shows recently that if the world is a global village, then we don't have rural areas anymore. What it means is everybody can be connected wherever you are in the world. And so if we're considering that, there are towns, cities, there are streets and names of areas that you might not find if you're trying to search using Google. So we decided to run a project that would help us to register names of places, businesses, communities, cities, landmarks across the state. So we called for volunteers to run the Google mapping project, and that's what we're currently working on. As I'm talking to you now, we have over 2,000 volunteers who we have trained, who are going about registering places, names of communities, and of course we're still open to getting as many volunteers as possible.
All right. My question now would be that seeing as Google Map could have got this done on its own, they were doing that before now.
So
what's the involvement of the government, with this?
Google wasn't doing it itself. At no point was Google doing it itself, because they don't know us like we can know ourselves. I have been a volunteer with Google on mapping projects for about 5 years now, personally on my own. So what we thought about was, what we are doing is not like we created a system that would add to the map. It's still Google Map we're using. There's a platform on Google Map that is called Google Local Guide. So we're registering people as local guiders on the map. It's a volunteer program of Google itself. So what we're only doing is enlightening the people to know about it so that they can participate in improving the presence of their own area. What it helps is, for instance, people who are into logistics business, they would understand that if you are in your house and you order a product, it is possible that a rider bringing your product misses his way because there are streets that lead to your area that is not on the map. So we are trying to, it's going to help to grow businesses. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not like we created a new system. It's a system of Google. We're only helping to improve what we have for the state.
How well has that gone, over this period?
Yes, so we, like I said, we have over 2,000 volunteers, and we are managing people. The performances will be different. So out of those 2,000, I can tell you categorically that we have over 600 of them that are actively doing what we're asking them to do. So, and we are giving them a target of doing 50 landmarks a day. So we are getting reports that will finally accumulate to present a total, summary of what we have done on the 6th of March, when the governor will be finally doing this 100 days program unveiling. Okay,
so let me take you up on that Google thing now. How much of Osun has been covered so far, the part of Osun that's been covered?
Well, so at this point, I'm not going to tell you this is the current percentage, because we're still working on it. But by the time we were starting on the 28th of November, what we discovered, I read in one report, was about 30% as at that time. So what it means is, even in Osogbo, there are streets you would go on Google and not find there. Yeah, so that was the percentage at the time we were starting. As at the time we had continued, we have a partner who have a partnership with Google. As they call them reviewers, and what they do is that whatever it is that we had as volunteers, they are the one that confirms it. So we are working with them so we can get a total report of, okay, maybe the percentage we even got in the beginning was not right, but they will be the one that would give us the final report of percentage by the time we are presenting our final report.
Oh, okay. So about the startup acts, let's go back now.
Yeah.
What exactly is it about, and how will it be of benefit to the people? Osun is not really much of an innovation hub or an ICT hub. So what is the act about itself, and how is it going to be beneficial?
Okay, you would remember that there was a time in Nigeria when there was a wave of people into Bitcoin, and everybody was almost doing it. And then one of those days, CBN just came, and only one instruction, that's a growing sector, you would want to describe it at that time, died. Well, maybe did not die, but anybody doing that right now would seem to be doing an illegal business. So what we are trying to do is to provide an enabling law for anybody that wants to do a business that is internet ICT related. It gives power for you to practice whatever it is you want to do within the state. What it means is, if anybody takes you to court or you have an issue, there is a law that backs it up. It's not just that you are registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. There's also a law within the state that enables you to do your business.
So the business now you're talking about, how are you going to ensure that they are legal? Because people can be phony, they can be shady to hide under this kind of act, for example, and say I run an online business, and there's a sub business underneath that is there any sort of monitoring provisions?
Yeah, so what we're planning to do is to have digital clubs. We're going to have digital clubs, tech clubs across the state, in secondary schools, in primary schools, in tertiary institutions, because you see, when we train people to do things, they know, for instance, in the ICT business, if you are doing something legal, you would even make money. So I don't know why you would go do the illegal when already doing the legal business, you're making a lot of money. That does not also mean that we will not have 1 or 2 persons who will be interested in, but we're going to have monitoring. So beyond that, we are doing ICT. Well, we would have people registered. So many of the people that would be doing this or registering their businesses with the state government and all of those things will be people from the digital clubs. We would have a recommendation from our clubs. Through the Ministry of Science and Tech, we would have a recommendation from our tech clubs, our digital hubs, so that we know who we are registering for any business within the state.
But still before my colleague comes in, still in line with that, have you given thought to the fact that before this act, fraud has always been on the rise?
So because apart from the fact that we would have all these things running and all those things, there's going to be a task force. That would be, well, I'm not going to preempt the governor, but I'm aware that there's going to be a ICT task force that's going to do all this monitoring that I've been mentioning. It's their job to do the monitoring, to do measure the effectiveness and ensure control. It's going to be their job. So the task force thing is still upcoming. That's why I'm a bit silent about it. But there's going to be a task force that will do all this monitoring thing I'm talking about.
All right. In all of those policies, does Osun State have a database? Is it updated? Does it have the number of people living, working in the state, what they do, where they live, and all of that? So
this question you're asking is a question of Nigeria, because if I was going to throw it back to you, I will ask if Nigeria even have a database. But that does not mean that Osun does not have a record. I'm using the word record because I would say still at this point analog. So we have these things, but it's very much analog, and that's why we're trying to improve, or that's what we are trying to improve on. There are records of people, records of houses, records of, for instance, as regards the mapping thing, we're going to be working with the Ministry of Lands because we want to have the names of all the streets in Osun State, and they had the one who has it. Unfortunately, it is analog. So that's what we're trying to improve. There are records that we would update and make sure it becomes a database eventually. Because
you said there will be task force to ensure that none of this translates to fraudulent activities. So it's important, isn't it, to have a record of
it is, and we are going to do that. I can assure you. We're going to do that.
All right. So to drive this project now, there's need for infrastructure. If you must say. Because there are no tech hubs. There is no.
There are tech hubs. Most of them are private.
Yes, most of them are private. There's no Silicon Valley kind of design in Osun State. Will the government be looking into infrastructural development? Yeah,
so the government is looking into infrastructural development, and we're pulling resources from outside the states, from across the nation, who are indigenes of Osun State, who are already experts in the ICT world, big guys in the ICT world. Today we have gotten about 20 of them who would work eventually with the task force to ensure that we have resources. One good thing about ICT is that government does not even need to really spend its own money in ICT. There are companies, for instance, like Google. For instance, our partner on the mapping project has a project with Google that Google is funding for about $1.5 million. So what many of these foreign agencies want to see in our part is readiness, and they are willing to support. For instance, there is a project in Ilegbo that is a digital literacy center built by the National Information Technology Development Authority, NIDA. free of charge for the state. So what we are trying to show the world, show the Nigerian government, is our readiness. These infrastructures, it does not mean that Osun or the state government will not take it up. But I'm telling you that we're going to be able to pool resources. That is not even our own. Because if you ask me, Osun is not really buoyant. But if you ask me, we can reach many of these foreign agencies. When they see our readiness, they'll be willing to partner with us and give us all these facilities you're talking about, so that our tech hubs and tech clubs can have a space of their own from which they would function.
Well, also talking about digital literacy now.
Yeah.
The digital literacy level, especially in Osun State,
it's quite low,
is not very much encouraging.
Yeah.
And are there plans to find a way to insert, because I believe it's a long-term project,
It is, yeah.
to insert this into the curriculum of the state? Are you partnering with Education Ministry or any other ministry that would inject digital literacy into the academic sector?
So in that ICT policy that I mentioned earlier, there is what we have, there are segments. For instance, there is ICT and education, there is ICT and agriculture, there is ICT and the youth. So there are all of those things in the policy. But if you ask me on my personal opinion is we don't need to make ICT a curriculum, because what will happen to ICT is that we're going to turn it into theory, and ICT is not theory. Many of us who studied in universities, polytechnics, only went there to study theory. The practical aspect of it is not really well open to us while we were in school. We got to the field before we realized, oh, what I'm even taught in class is not what is happening here. So we have plans of taking ICT into schools, but not in a conventional way, that it will become theory. We don't want people who don't know ICT to teach people ICT. We want experts to manage it. So that's why we're using the method of clubs, because what we are going to do with those clubs is that experts would be their coach. Instead of having a teacher come into the class and using white marker to teach people what is supposed to be done on a system. So we would take it to schools, but I don't think that we would use curriculum, because it's not going to be effective. It's going to turn people to theory experts, and we don't want theory experts. It doesn't drive solutions. ICT is solution driven.
So what's the projection of the Adeleke government
In terms of ICT?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what are you looking at, and if and when this is implemented, how soon will it begin to, turn around the fortunes of the state, and how would it impact the state? How soon will people begin to reap the reward? Also, in terms of the economy, how does it drive up IGR and every other fiscal angle to this?
I'm going to try to give a simple narrative to how it's going to help to drive our IGR and all those things. One of the things that is happening in the world right now after COVID is remote jobs and hybrid jobs. So fortunately, many of these guys in ICT are doing remote jobs and hybrid jobs. So if we have trained people, for instance, we have trained 1,000 people, and our target actually is 10,000. But if
across the
state, 1,000 for instance, and we have 1,000 of them living in Osogbo, for instance, and maybe they are earning, let's say, $5,000 per month or thereabout. You know what it means? They'll spend that money here. They have a better living standard, and it's going to eventually roll around, because they have people that are depending on them, and that money stays here because they are living here. They wouldn't even need to relocate because their job does not require it. Take it or leave it, Osun has one of the best electricity in the country, so that helps them to work effectively wherever they are. So it's going to improve our IGR, because we are going to have, what we're raising is not only ICT experts.
I would like to legitimate millionaires.
Legitimate millionaires, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's part of the statements that the Governor Adeleke made when he visited the House of Assembly was that he was going to continue some project of the past administration that he finds in the interest of the people.
Yes.
So in this area now, the area of tech, are there any policies, any spillover from the previous administration that the Adeleke will be, taking over, particularly the OES tech, some of the people who were sponsored, that left the shores of the country. Would that be something that will be continued, or there's a deviation from that plan?
If you see, personally, I took a look at some of these things that we described as empowerment in the past. And so, for instance, in the OS Tech thing, up till this present moment I'm talking to you now, I've not been able to understand what exactly they did. And this is not politics. I'm still finding it difficult, because if we have, that project was done, I'm not there when they did it, but I thought they would do it with the Ministry of Science and Technology. So if they had done it with the ministry, what it means is that the ministry is supposed to have a pool of experts who are tech experts from their training programs that they had done in the past. Up till this moment, we don't have any. So whilst it sounds nice to the hearing that there was a project that affects technology, it's also sad that we don't even know who these experts that they have trained are up to this moment. So, of course, I would personally take it up to make sure that I go find out more. I've been asking questions anyway. I've not gotten an answer. But so I will go more into this to figure out where those guys are. But up till this moment, we don't know any of those guys who were trained in tech. And then let me say that, you see, tech is growing. Technology is growing. At a point in time, we don't have artificial intelligence. We have it now. There is now Internet of Things. There is this chat GPT is changing quite a number of things. So tech is no longer teaching people how to repair laptop. Of course that works, but that's like the lowest level of technology. That's hardware. So maybe my assumption, personally, maybe that was what they did as tech, but I would find out and I will get back to you.
All right,
but honestly, I don't know them.
You're going to be training 10,000
yes,
people.
Yes.
All right, what's the demography? I mean, and how do you plan on carrying this out effectively? Is it going to be in batches?
It's going to be in batches, definitely. We can't do 10,000 at once. It's not going to be effective. But you see, the good thing is that we are going to spread it across the states. So it gives us the opportunity to have everybody involved. However, tech is not limiting. There's no age limits to tech. Anybody can be trained. There is no gender sensitivity in tech. Anybody can be a tech expert. Even the blind can be a tech expert, because there are things that they can do, to earn a better living for themselves. So there's no discrimination whatsoever. There is no, anybody that is willing and interested can be trained in technology. So there's no requirement, so to speak, but we just need, the basic requirement is readiness. I know of a young man in Lagos who only has a secondary school certificate. What the guy is earning per month, I don't earn. I'm challenging the young man to still go to the university. He doesn't see the need to, because already what he knows, I don't know. So there's no limit to tech. Anybody can be trained.
So we spoke about the hubs and centers earlier. Who are your partners? Are you working with any hubs outside Osun State? Particularly, some institutions already have hubs. Some provided by some service providers.
Yes.
Like the one in Yaba Tech. Are you making any plans to partner with them?
We're making plans to partner. Yes. So we have, for instance, we've contacted Cisco, that networking agency, so that they can help us with some trainings. I've contacted Google as well. So what we're trying to do is to first of all identify individuals who are already into the business in Osun State, who have hubs. Like I said earlier, there are hubs. I know of 2 in Ife. I know of 1 in Iwo. There are about 3 of them in Osogbo. So we're identifying those guys first. We want to have them together in a group, so that when the new guys come, they would already know that there are people that they met on ground that they can work together with. So we're identifying them across the states. What we are trying to do is to make sure that everything starts here and ends here. So while we're partnering with people from outside the state, we are going to be bringing them down here, not we going to them. That's our target.
All right. But how about, I know you've talked about taking it to schools and all of that. Okay. Well, let's look at the constitution of the schools in Osun State, for example. Do you have plans of integrating? You talked about clubs and hubs. will secondary schools, for instance, have their own hubs or their own clubs? Are you taking it to them?
Normally, an appropriate secondary school should have one. I mean, without even this government intervention. An appropriate secondary school is supposed to have a computer laboratory and a hub. But these days, I mean, using the word laboratory is even moribund. People don't talk about laboratories anymore. In a school, it is a digital club or a tech hub. Sorry. And so, for instance, in the 100 days plan of the governor, where you would see a part of it that affects secondary schools. I mean, schools, renovation of schools. And if you read it to the end, you will see that a part of it is that we're not only going to paint it or rebuild it, we're also going to equip it. One of those things that we're going to do, equipping it, is putting in there a tech hub. And so we are going to start, they are doing 30 in the 100 days. So it tells that it's in phases. We'll do, after this 30, there'll be another one. I don't know the number yet, but there'll be another one because it's going to be in phases. So we're going to have, instead of having computer laboratories where you just see computers that are not working, it's going to be a tech hub that's going to be in our schools, secondary schools, primary schools, and we're going to have people managing it who are not ignorant of what they're managing.
Oh, all right.
Because you've spoken about not wanting to make this, theoretical now.
Yeah.
So what's the plan towards that? If you are building tech hubs, if you're erecting tech hubs, what's the plan to have experts in those, tech 30 tech hubs?
So that's why I said we're identifying people who already have hubs. Because our idea is would partner with them to act as mentors and coaches in those hubs that we're going to be building across the state, so that they are the ones that will train other people. And that's why also our digital literacy program is focused in that direction, so that those guys that we have trained are the ones that are going to have to work with the government as mentors and coaches in those hubs, so that whoever is interested in learning would not be discouraged by who is teaching them. And so, for secondary schools, we don't even need them to show interest. We are going to open them up to the opportunities that's available that will drive their interest. Because, for instance, anybody in this age, a 10-year, 11-year-old child might not really have it gathered together, especially if on the background where he's coming from, there are issues. But when we open them up to the opportunities and the available resources, we are going to create in them an interest that would open them up to the ICT.
All right. So just before we let you go, can you just give us a rundown of, I understand there's a 6.6 day, it's not 6 days now, but broken into 6 parts of the implementation of the digital, the innovation and digital economic policy. Can you give us those
specifically, because it has to do with dates, I would have to check my own phone. I have it on my phone. I know we're starting, like I said, on the 14th of February with the validation exercise for our policies. And so stakeholders consultation for ICT policy and state innovation policy, that one is on the 14th of February. Stakeholders consultation and on domestication of the Nigerian Startup Act. So the Startup Act is a national act. So we're domesticating it for Osun State, and it's going to be named Osun State Startup Act. So that's also on the 15th of February. The validation workshop for the policies, those 2 policies, ICT policy and the innovation policy, is on the 23rd of February. The validation workshop for the Startup Act is on the 1st of March. For the Google mapping project, we're doing an accelerated system, and that's why I mentioned them registering 50 landmarks. We started yesterday, 8th of February. On the 6th of March, we're going to have a public event that will be chaired by the governor, and that's where we are going to do the unveiling of the Osun State ICT policy. That's why we're going to do the unveiling of the Osun State Tech Innovation Policy, and then we'll present our own Google mapping report. And then we inaugurate Osun Technology Innovation and Digital Economy Advisory Board. That board is those 15 people I said we have identified, who are tech experts across the world, but are indigenous of the state. And then we're going to have the inauguration. So we're going to also have the governor signing the letter that will present the bill, the Startup Act, to the House of Assembly, also on the 6th of March. So that's a rundown of our events going forward.
All right, well, that's where we'll leave the conversation this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Isola, who is the media assistant to Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State on ICT. We've been talking about some of the governor's plans as promised in his inaugural speech for digital literacy, innovation, technology, and the digital economy, especially here in Osun State where he governs. So thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that's the first leg of the interview. When we come back, we'll bring you the second leg of the interview. To stay with us.